Legolas, Hawkeye, the Green Arrow. Just a few epic bow and arrow wielders in fantasy worlds. In Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, the Spore Warden is the epic bow and arrow wielder. What's up, YouTube? Zero here, and today I'm going to help you become an epic bow and arrow wielder in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands with an epic Spore Warden Clawbringer build. In this video, I'll go through the overview of the skills and stats you need to become an epic Spore Warden Clawbringer. Then I'll get into some more gameplay, and I'll talk about the skill choices and why they are absolutely epic for this build. Then, at the end of the video, I'll get into the equipment that I utilize for this build. I'll talk about the equipment that I prefer to use, and then I'll talk about the equipment that is absolutely necessary for this build. I'll also talk about some of that throughout the video while talking about the skills utilized for this build. If you do enjoy this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more Tiny Tina's Wonderlands content. Do a bunch of other RPGs, so feel free to check those out as well. Now let's get into the build of the Spore Warden Clawbringer. Of course, this is going to come with two companions, the Mushroom Companion and Wyvern Companion. The ability you want equipped is Barrage, which is going to fire arrows and ricochet between enemies. Then in our Spore Warden tree, we want to start with Kindred Heart, which is going to increase companion damage and health. Then Eagle Eye, which is going to increase our gun damage and gun handling. Bullseye, which is going to increase the critical hit chance of both our guns and our companion. And Spore Cloud, our Mushroom Companion, is going to let one rip, which taunts enemies, and that poison cloud that he lets rip also deals damage. Medicinal Mushroom. If we enter Save Our Soul as our Fate Bringer, our Mushroom Companion is going to attempt to revive us. If this is successful, damage is going to be increased for a duration. And last in this row, Quiver of Holding. The magazine size for our guns is going to be increased, and we're going to get some ammo regeneration. And the bread and butter of the Spore Warden tree, Wrath of Nature. Whenever the Fate Maker deals ability damage to an enemy, that enemy is going to take increased damage from all sources for a duration, which can really help us deal massive amounts of damage to enemies. Now in our Clawbringer tree, Oath of Fire, the Fate Maker's gun damage and his Wyvern Companion deal bonus fire damage. That's extremely nice. And then Radiance, the Fate Maker gains increased maximum ward capacity. In the next row, Rebuke, the Fate Maker gains increased damage reduction, and all damage dealt to allies is reflected to the attacker as lightning damage. So that's really nice on the defensive side. In the last row, Friend to Flame. Our Wyvern Companion is going to deal increased damage. You actually only put 4 of 5 in this skill. And then Firebolt, the Wyvern Companion, will occasionally shoot firebolts to all enemies. This causes fire damage and increases gun damage for a brief time. And Storm Breath, our Wyvern Companion, is going to utilize Lightning Breath on enemies that arc from enemies, and we get increased damage reduction for a time. Now let's get into skills, and you want to first focus on Atonement, which is going to give us faster action skill cooldown, so we get to use our action skill more often, and Wisdom, where we're going to have increased status effect damage. Those are going to be the two stats you want to focus on. The last stat is going to be Strength, where we can get increased critical hit damage. So now that we've gone over the skills and the stats, let's get into some more gameplay and talk about why this build is absolutely epic. This build is not just very well balanced from a skill perspective, in that we have 23 points in our Spore Warden and 21 points in our Clawbringer, but it's absolutely epic because it balances offensive with defensive skills very nicely. First, let's talk about our offensive skills, where the Fate Maker is going to be doling out a ton of damage. Starting in our Spore Warden tree, we have Eagle Eye, where we're going to increase our gun damage by 20%. Absolutely awesome, especially combined with Bullseye, which is going to increase our gun critical hit chance by 60%. On top of this, we have Quiver of Holding, where our magazine size is going to be increased, and our regen of bullets is going to be increased, so we can constantly be dealing out that damage. The bread and butter of the Spore Warden skill tree is going to be our Wrath of Nature. So whenever the Fate Maker deals ability damage to an enemy, that enemy is going to take increased damage by 30%. So we're going to be dealing even more damage thanks to Wrath of Nature. And remember, we're a bow and arrow epic style player, just like Hawkeye. So we have 3 charges of Barrage, and we're going to be doling out that ability damage non-stop, making it so enemies are going to be constantly taking that increased damage from all sources, on top of already increased gun stats. Then we go over to our Clawbringer tree, where we have Oath of Fire, where we're going to be dealing 20% increased bonus fire damage, which is going to be absolutely awesome to tear through enemies. We also have 1 skill invested in Firebolt. So whenever our Wyvern companion shoots a Firebolt, the Fate Maker's gun damage is going to be increased, which is helping us deal even more damage. On top of that, our companions are going to be dealing increased damage. We have Kindred Heart increasing our companion damage by 40%. The Bullseye that I mentioned for an increased gun critical hit for the Fate Maker also increases the companion critical hit. We also have the Oath of Fire previously mentioned, which increases bonus fire damage for our Wyvern companion. We're also going to have the Firebolt that our Wyvern companion is going to shoot, the Storm Breath in which our Wyvern companion is going to shoot, and Friend to Flame, which increases our Wyvern companion damage dealt by 80%. So offensively, we are absolutely stacked. But don't let that fool you, because defensively, we are stacked as well. I want to talk about the companion stack defense first, and then talk about how that plays with our Fate Maker defensive stats. So we have Kindred Heart, where we have increased 45% companion health. This is going to play nicely with Spore Cloud, where our Mushroom companion is going to taunt by letting one rip. This is going to allow our Mushroom companion to stay alive longer while taking all of those bullets. But what it's also going to do is it's going to take bullets away from the Fate Maker, allowing our shield to regen a lot easier. Then we're going to have Medicinal Mushroom, where if by unfortunate circumstances the Fate Maker does go into Save Your Soul, we have, I don't want to say a get out of jail free card, but we have an extra option. So we don't necessarily have to kill an enemy. We do have our Mushroom companion who will come to save us as long as the Mushroom companion is alive. Now that was the Spore Warden side of the defense. Let's go over to the Clawbringer side of the defense for both our companion and the Fate Maker. We have plus 30% maximum ward capacity. This is going to be insanely crucial, and is going to work nicely with our armor that we're going to equip, that I'm going to tell you is absolutely crucial for this build in Deathless Mantle, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Then we also have increased damage reduction for our Fate Maker. And finally, our Storm Breath. Every time our Wyvern companion deals its Lightning Breath, we're going to get even more damage reduction. So now that I've talked about more of the defense, let's talk about that piece of equipment or two that's going to be absolutely crucial for this build. The first is going to be the Deathless Mantle that I just mentioned. What this does is reserves all but 1 HP, returning 150% as ward capacity and minus 50% ward regen delay. We're putting a lot into our ward. we're increasing our ward capacity with our skill by 30%. Now we're getting even more with 150%. On top of that, we're getting our ward regen delay reduced so we can get our ward back faster. That's going to be extremely important from a survivability perspective. On top of that, the second piece of equipment that we absolutely need for this build is going to be an amulet. And that's going to be the Harbinger. The Harbinger amulet, activating an action skill instantly restores 50% of your ward over 2 seconds. While utilizing Barrage allows us to constantly cast our ability. We have 3 charges. So we're going to be able to restore our ward that's already beefed out. We have 30% increase from a skill. Now we have Deathless Mantle that's getting rid of our health but increasing our ward even more. And now we have Barrage, which is going to constantly help us restore our shield. So that's going to be really great from a survivability perspective, and we're also taking a lot of damage reduction. So now that we've gone over the skills, and we've also gone over some of the major equipment, let's get into more equipment that I like to utilize for this build. Now that I've talked about the skills and the equipment you absolutely need for this build, let me talk about the other pieces of equipment that I love using with this build to enhance it but aren't necessary. You can use whatever melee you want. To be honest, I rarely melee. I am more of a range type player. For my weapons, I'm going to be utilizing all Torg weapons. The first one is going to be the Inscrapulator, which is a Torg assault rifle. Its damage is multiplied by 3, so it deals a lot of damage. Then for my shotgun, my second weapon, I'm going to have Hawken's Wrath, another Torg. What's nice about this is whether you're utilizing sticky ammo or impact ammo, is you're going to have wyverns that shoot out and track enemies. You can also use the Sword Explosion shotgun, which is actually going to call down a sword and deal damage to enemies. For my third weapon, I'm going to have the Boot Knocker, Torg rocket launcher. You can also use the Cannonballer rocket launcher from Torg as well. What I didn't mention earlier is that Torg weapons, for sticky ammo, the more sticky ammo that you stick on an enemy, the more damage that enemy takes from those sticky bullets. So finally, I used the Luddite pistol Torg, and again, just reiterating, utilizing sticky ammo deals increased damage, which is why it works really well with this build. For my rings, I have the Promise Ring, which increases my gun damage, and while action skill is ready, effects are going to be increased by 33%. Remember earlier with our stats, we're increasing our effect damage, so with this, we're going to increase it even more. And then I have the Class Ring, which increases my companion damage, and while action skill is on cooldown, effects are increased by 50%. So really, regardless of if I've utilized my action skill or it's waiting for me, I'm going to be increasing my effects. We've talked about Deathless Mantle. This is extremely important for the build and is necessary so we can increase our ward capacity and regeneration delay, so we can constantly be healing our ward and really put our defense into our ward. We have a lot of skills that focus on our ward and damage reduction, so we want to put more capacity into our ward and really not pay attention to health, because we have nothing for this build that would heal our health if we had health to begin with. We would have to rely on dark magic weapons, and with this armor, we won't have to do that. So this is extremely crucial to the build. Now for my shield, I'm using the Spirit Rune. What this does is while standing still, I gain 20% increased lightning damage, and my ward regeneration delay is reduced to 0. This is going to be nice, so if I get a moment to stand still, my ward starts regenerating. This also increases my maximum ward by 25%, making my ward even beefier. And also, while full, shots drain 30% of ward for 20% gun damage. We already have a huge ward, so sacrificing a little bit of that for increased gun damage is going to help us dole out gun damage a lot. Remember, we also have a lot of skills that help us get our ward back really quickly, so sacrificing that ward for extra gun damage isn't going to hurt. If you don't have the Spirit Rune, you can also use the Cold Front Static Charge, in which the ward regenerates while sliding, which is nice. You can constantly slide to regenerate your ward, and this also increases the ward regeneration rate. So either shield will work for this build. I talked about the Harbinger already. I have the Dragon's Harbinger, but again, activating an action skill instantly restores 50% of your ward over 2 seconds. We're going to be constantly activating our action skill. So this is really nice, so we can constantly get our ward recharged. We've put everything we have into our ward. We have no health. So constantly recharging our ward is going to help us stay alive even more. For my spell, I have the Jacketed Buffmeister. I have the shock, so I can deal extra shock damage. And the Buffmeister is going to help me deal more damage to enemies. So what's really nice is in our skills, I'm already dealing extra fire damage. Having a shock Buffmeister is going to help me deal extra shock damage. So I'm dealing added shock damage to enemies and added fire damage to enemies. My Wyvern is also doing this. This allows me to tear through both shields and flesh extremely easily. So I love the Buffmeister on this build. While you can utilize this build with other spells, I prefer utilizing the Buffmeister, especially the Shock Buffmeister. While you can utilize other guns, I really do recommend utilizing Torb. Utilizing sticky ammo so you can deal that increased damage the more you stick an enemy with ammo is going to help you just completely run through enemies. Especially enemies that have been hit with Barrage. Remember, every enemy hit with Barrage, thanks to Wrath of Nature, is taking increased damage from all sources. The sticky ammo being attached to enemies and dealing even more increased damage is going to increase damage even more because of Wrath of Nature. So you can completely decimate enemies by combining Wrath of Nature with Torg sticky ammo. We are coming down to the end of the video, so I want to hear what you think of this build. Do you use a similar Spore Warden Clawbringer build, or is yours completely different? Let me know in the comments section. There are so many different builds in this game. I love Tiny Tina's Wonderlands for the fact that we have so many options and all of them work really well. So I'm curious to hear in the comments section if you've utilized something similar or if you're ready to try out this build. Are you pumped about this build for your Spore Warden Clawbringer? Let me know in the comments section. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and until next time, peace.